You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydayers. Got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talking to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Bengal Tigers, man. And what the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we bring you championship level content every single day, man. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listen is greatly appreciated. And listen, man, I know this is going to be an action-packed show, so go ahead and hit the like button. Don't forget to comment and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel over at Locked On NFL Draft DP. We ranked quarterbacks. We ranked running backs. It's time to rank some wide receivers. This is the playmaker edition, right? It's time to rank those wide receivers. So what we're going to do is in today's show, listen, I'm coming to the table with my top 10 wide receivers. DP is coming to the table with his top 10 wide receivers. And we're going to have a really fun action-packed show and then compare these wide receiver classes to the wide receiver classes of past. And we're going to have a really good conversation. But before we get started, DP, with this wide receiver conversation, why don't you hit with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Man, Keith, talk about coming off of one of the better wide receiver classes from 2024. That's a high bar to clear for 2025. But look, this is still a talented group. I don't think it's as great at the top, you know what I mean, for what right now heading into the season as what we saw from 2024. But looking at my list, I have Tator McMillan out of Arizona at number 1. I have Travis Hunter, the dual threat guy that he is, out of Colorado. I have Luther Burden III out of Missouri at 3. I have Emeka Egbuka at 4 out of Ohio State. At 5, I have Evan Stewart from who transferred to Oregon. At 6, I have Antoine Wells Jr., transferred from South Carolina to Ole Miss. At number 7, I have Deion Burks, who transferred to Oklahoma from Purdue. At number 8, I have Nick Anderson, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. At number 9, I have Isaiah Bond, Alabama wide receiver turned into Texas wide receiver. And at number 10, I have Samuel Brown, wide receiver who transferred from Houston to Miami. Keith, you have number 1, Tator McMillan, Travis Hunter, Luther Burden at number 3. You have Antoine Wells at number 4, Emeka Egbuka at 5, Sam Brown at 6, Deion Burks at 7, Evan Stewart at 8, Isaiah Bond at 9, and Nick Anderson at 10. So our top 3 are basically chalk. It's the exact same list at the top with the top 3. Keith, when you tell, I'll say for me, that wide receiver 1 spot is wide open. As much as I love Tator McMillan, Travis Hunter, this is the conundrum of playing both sides.
Mm-hmm.
If Travis Hunter if he played just receiver, like he would be absolutely in that wide. He's in that wide receiver 1 conversation. 6'1", I think he's like a $190 or 195, 185 to 195, somewhere in there. Legitimate athlete, route running, ball skills, can catch the ball well, work inside and out. He can do everything as a receiver, right? A legitimate deep threat, can take the top off the defense too, especially if you're leaving them 1-on-1 on the island. But again, he plays both sides. We don't know where he's going to declare at come March, February, whatever. But it's close because I have Tator as he's like half a point higher on the grading scale than Travis Hunter right now, and they're only like a full point higher than Luther Burden III.
Yeah, I had those guys pretty close too, DP. When I look at my rankings, I believe I had Tator. Well, I had them in the same range. I'll say that. I believe I had Travis Hunter at a 86 and a half, and then Tator McMillan at an 88. So I'm probably a little bit higher on T-Mac than what you probably are with Travis Hunter, because actually it's good that we're doing this podcast. This is my first time really evaluating him, period. I've Like that was my first time cutting on film outside of watching the highlights on Fox or something like that, or one of the ESPN or something. It was actually my first time diving into the film to see the caliber athlete. Two guys I thought of when I watched him. I thought of Jerry Jeudy. I thought of Chris Olave. I thought he was one of those type of wide receivers, right? That's gonna win with. He has the short area quickness and can make you miss in space like Jerry Jeudy. But I thought he could be the smooth mover and the vertical field stretcher like a Chris Olave, right? So I thought he's probably bigger than Jerry Jeudy, but moves similar to Chris Olave also. So I liked him kind of in there, and I gave him, like I said, a first round grade as a wide receiver. So if you ask me drafting today, I feel good about my 1-2 order as far as if I'm the GM and I'm on the clock, I'm taking T-Mac first, and then I would take Travis Hunter. Now, I will ask you this: with ranking Travis Hunter, do you view him as a wide receiver one for NFL offense? Like if you're starting a franchise, do you see him and say, "Hey, I'm gonna place you as the focal point of my entire offense"?
I think he could be. You know what I mean? I think when you look at those, like, especially, and it's becoming so rampant now that Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, West Coast offense, that's the tree everybody's trying to pull an offensive staffer from to be their OC going into the next offseason, right? And it's starting to become the new the offense of the NFL. And I look at him and I was like, if you put him in one of those type of offenses where you're not asked to be that traditional X, right? Like you look at San Fran, their X is Brandon Ayuk, right? Who's probably 6'1", 6'2". He's not the 6'3", 6'4", 225-pound traditional X we're so accustomed to. So I think Travis Hunter could. Like he is, like T-Mac is still he's still my wide receiver one right now. I think the thing with T-Mac, I don't like the Arizona offense and how they use him. Like that offense is really gimmicky to me. You got a lot of screens, and he showcases that he can run routes. Like I think I clipped up multiple whip routes where he left defenders sitting in the middle of the field as he breaks back outside and pivots and changes directions. And I'm like, this dude's like 6'4". You shouldn't be able to do this. You know what I mean? Like you don't see big receivers that tall and linear, but then you see, I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter and stuff, like the some of the highlight stuff from practice where they're throwing fade balls to him and he goes up with one hand, catches it, and I think he puts it between both legs like a dunk before he comes down. I'm like, why are you able to levitate like this in the air and just maintain your body control that high? But he's a kind of a freaky dude. So yeah, I think those two guys are going to be my etched in stone wide receiver 1 and 2 right now. Luther Burden seems to be the consensus for a lot of people, but I just have some questions based on kind of how Missouri uses him.
Well, DP, let's get into those question marks, right? Coming up next, man, we talked about our wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 where we were locked in tandem with that, but wide receiver 3 for us, Mr. Luther Burden, who's appears to be everybody else's or a good deal of this NFL draft community, right? Wide receivers 1, they have comparisons to Malik Neighbors, right? So we're going to have the conversation about Luther Burden and why he came in as wide receiver 3 for us coming up next.
Luther Burden III, Keith, came in as our wide receiver 3. Still, I think both of us still give him a first round grade. So it's not like he's a day 2 prospect to us or anything. But with him, I have questions about, okay, he plays a ton in the slot. I know that there was a report that he's supposed to play more outside, and I hope to see that, to see, do you have that true inside-out flexibility full-time, right? Where if I'm a team that has a legitimate slot receiver, right? Like, for example, the Detroit Lions, you're not drafting another slot. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's got that locked down. You just paid him a lot of money, by the way. So he's good there. But if you need somebody to play outside of him, right, to go along with Jameson Williams, and if Luther Burden can play on the outside, I would absolutely make that pick and pair those guys together and have just a vast variety of skill sets that can mesh well together. But if Luther Burden can only play in the slot against nickel corners, yeah, you're off my board because I don't have a need for you in this offense because I already have a legitimate slot receiver. I'd rather draft a guy in the 4th round to be the backup slot than spend a first round pick on the guy that not say he can't play outside, but is more, it preferably plays in the slot. So I want to see him play more outside. The route running and salesmanship is just, it's not consistent for me. And I want to see, because when you have a two-way go, it does give you a little bit easier track to getting open. I want to see him just kind of sell his routes more, right? And the Malik Neighbors thing, and I remember I felt like that, like coming into summer scouting, I was like, man, looking at his body type, looking at T-Mac's body type, I'm like, this is about to be Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors all over again, right? Where you got one guy who's big, smooth, fluid, great catch radius, traditional X, but a good route running for his size and everything like that. And you got a guy that people are going to say, well, he's more explosive. He's great after the catch. You can get more yards after the catch with him, stuff like that. I was like that. And I still think that's going to be the narrative with those two and how people view them. But, yeah, the juice in terms of speed, explosiveness, acceleration, yeah, Luther Burton is a dog. And I love what I see from him and the potential he has. But Malik Neighbors is a different animal in that regard. And I can't put him in that stratosphere, Keith. I think he's a tier 2 below in terms of natural speed and athleticism. That's a 4.3 athlete we're talking about with Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I look at Luther Burton, DP, and we kind of somewhat had this conversation. It's kind of, we have this conversation on air, which is pretty good, is that Luther operating in a slot, and we talked about him taking the next step to the NFL, right? And the operation in the slot, I want to clear this up because we've also been, on air, had this conversation where we appreciate slot wide receivers, and it shouldn't necessarily be knocked all the time, right? So it's not that he plays slot, it's that, hey, if it's primarily slot and I can't move you around, right? Like that's the part I need to be able to see you play slot, but also see you play X, play Z, just do those type of different things and be ultra, I guess be ultra effective at it, right? To be able to move into like that upper echelon. Like I said, it gave Luther Burton the first round grade. It's just, now we're critiquing the details of the game.
Yeah.
Secondly, I can't help but think, once you get to the NFL, is that the NFL is going to have better nickel corners, right? In college, of course, you're going to struggle to have two corners to even cover your outside wide receivers, right? Let alone your nickel position. So in the NFL, they're drafting, they have three corners. You have a CB1, CB2, and a really good nickel, right? Like that's a much more prominent position in the NFL. So I would have to think that he's going to see better players in the NFL. Like, and that's how I looked at it when the LSU, right? It's like, okay, you run out Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. It's like, man, nobody could stop him. And it was like, yeah, I mean, because who has two college corners, right? To be able to stop
nonetheless three.
Yeah, let alone three corners, right? So it's the same situation that I would think that the corners in the NFL, as far as we get Pro Bowl nickel guys, right? Like really good high level players at the nickel position, or even just corners DP that play on the outside, but they're like, what? The game plan is if Luther's in a slot, then we put our number one corner on him in a slot, right? And then we're just gonna be able to turn and roll with it like that. So I think that's going to be a key part of this, and that's why I'll be looking at level of competition, who he's facing, who he's going up against, to be able to make some determinations with Luther Burton. But DP, Luther Burton is at 3, but then this is where the list gets a little crazy for us. So I don't know if you want to go back to your list and list off your next 3, and then I'll talk about my next 3 and how they kind of vary in different ways.
Yeah, so at number 4, I have Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. And number 5, I have Evan Stewart out of Oregon. And then at number 6, I have Antoine Wells Jr. out of Ole Miss.
Yeah, and so number 4, I have Antoine Wells. So your number 6 is my number 4. Emeka Egbuka, I have him at 5, and you have him at 4. And then I have Sam Brown. So I think Emeka Egbuka is talked about a great deal. I think we need to have a conversation about Antoine Wells and Sam Brown to kind of wrap this part up. Let's start with Juice Wells, just because I had him ranked higher. Number 4, there's kid got injured right early last year. He was supposed to be the dude at South Carolina, right? Even over Xavier Legette. Got injured, I think, in the Georgia game, DP. And then, much hasn't been said, right? And so now he transfers to Ole Miss, this Lane Kiffin offense. The only thing I can do is just simply believe that his production is going to skyrocket. I think what we see out of Antoine Wells this year, let it be healthy, right, is what we thought Jonathan Mingo was. And that's the only thing I could think of, because they're probably very similar frames. I feel like Juice Wells is right around that 6'6", 215 pound, right? Thick kind of lower half, run after the catch. explosive, take the top off type of guy. So I looked at it and I said, hey, if you can get this guy, and get production out of him, I think his physical profile and athleticism is going to match up because he's made some spectacular plays and has some very productive seasons. I think the 2021 and 2022 was back-to-back 1,000-yard season, something very close to that.
Yeah, he had 11 over almost 1,200 yards at James Madison, and then 2022 when he came to South Carolina, he had around 900 yards receiving, and then of course he got hurt last year. And those three guys I listed are very their grades are so close in that second round, and I think Juice Wells has the potential. He's listed at 6'1", 210. Right, you see that explosiveness, the burst, the natural athleticism. Where you look at and that's going to be the big thing for him. That's why. He's right there in that grouping of Evan Stewart and Emeka Egbuka for me, because he's got the potential to leapfrog them and get be that fourth wide receiver in the first round, right? When you have the frame that's bigger than Evan Stewart, right? But then you have the athleticism that's greater than Emeka Egbuka. If you go out there and just put it all on tape again one more time, be healthy, and then of course in this Lane offense, Lane just do us this favor, don't use him like you used Jonathan Mingo. You had Mingo at tight end. You had Mingo at running back. I don't want to see none of that. Let this man play wide receiver and go out there and cook. But you also have Trey Harris over there. They got some playmakers over at Ole Miss with Jackson Dart. You know what I mean? So I have them slated mid to upper second round in terms of Juice Wells. I think there's a big opportunity for him to leap forward. Got to stay healthy. I want to see him, just as a route runner, just be consistent. Right, and separate not just with that physicality and athleticism, but with the nuance and details of the position as well. Because you're not going to be able to outmuscle every NFL corner or outrun every NFL corner. How can you set guys up consistently and make your ability to win easy? That's the guy I look at. Keith, for me, Evan Stewart, and I believe he was like a 4 or 5 star recruit coming out of high school, and this guy went to Texas A&M and. Texas A&M had some quarterback issues over the last 2 years while he was there, injuries and different things like that. And when I watched him, the main thing I need him to fix are drops. He's got some concentration drops on tape. Don't like that. Got to clean that up. But then the route running, the twitch, the short area quickness and burst, the ability to get open against man. He could play the Z spot. You're not playing him at X because I believe he's 5'11", 175. But guys like Josh Downs having a strong rookie year. Guys like Tank Dell having a strong rookie year. Those type of guys are going the same way with Emeka Egbuka. And I think when we did summer scouting, I said, man, he reminds me of Amon-Ra St. Brown. You know what I mean?
I was watching him yesterday, just in preparation for the show. And I was like, yeah, I like that comp a whole lot. I was like that. I couldn't think anybody else, right? I went on Mock Draftable and I went to go find another guy, and I'm like, I can't think anybody else. And I don't know it's because if he wears the kind of white tights with the all black spatic cleats like Amon-Ra also, but I was like maybe Robert Woods, but I'm like the Amon-Ra thing just kind of it fits too much, body profile.
It fits like a glove to me. Yeah, it feels like a glove. So I mean, you look at that, and like I said, with Evan Stewart, he's more of Amon-Ra is going to get somebody built like him that plays the slot mostly, drafted higher, because teams always end up trying to we got to correct that wrong. We should never have let Amon-Ra fall down the board because he was 6 foot even, 5'11", 205, 210. And he ran maybe 4.48 or whatever he ran. I don't have his actual combine numbers or anything in front of me. But they allowed some of the size and athleticism questions to knock him down the board. And then he becomes one of the best receivers in the league, right? And one of the most productive receivers in the league. And for me, it's he's going to get other guys drafted. Tank Dell is going to get somebody built like him that can play similar, drafted. And I think that's going to be Evan Stewart. And with that pedigree as a 4 or 5 star recruit, and this Oregon offense that's going to spread defenses east and west and north and south, this is a big opportunity for Evan Stewart to go out there and cook. Remember when I presented him, I said, I know everybody loves Tez Johnson, the receiver that's already at Oregon. They call him wide receiver 1. In terms of actual skill set and translating to the NFL, I think that's going to be Evan Stewart.
Yeah, we'll see with DP. Guess what, man? You said something about wide receiver, NFL wide receivers helping college guys get drafted, right? Well, there's one particular wide receiver DP that Zay Flowers, I believe, is going to help get drafted in my wide receiver ranking. So we're going to have this conversation. Who will Mr. Zay Flowers help get drafted into that first round? We're going to talk about that guy coming up next.
Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydayers. Zay Flowers comp, Keaton, is crazy because we did not talk about this before the show. And I know where as soon as you said it, I was like, I know where he's going because I had the exact same one. I almost texted to you last night, Keith. Purdue transfer to Oklahoma, Deion Burks. This 5'9", 190 pounds. He's explosive. He's got a strong frame. I saw a tweet from one of my guys. I forget who it was, but I think he had they said he has almost 600 not bench, Jesus, a 600 squat. Like he's super strong. He's compact build. And then turning on the tape and watching him in depth last night, I was like, yeah, Zay Flowers is the move here because Zay Flowers is that guy that's so positionally fluid. He'll line up as the X, but off the ball. He'll line up in the slot. He'll line up as the Z. He'll go up in motion. You can get him quick screens and everything, but he also can run routes. And then he is a dynamic receiver after the catch. And I tweeted out as I was watching last night. I found a clip on Twitter where I can't remember which game it was, but it might have been Nebraska, where I think he had either a slant or a drag, caught it within traffic, fought through a tackle, I think spun off of a tackle, and then took off. And I was just like, yeah, this dude's the real deal. And it's then watch him against Will Johnson. The only two receivers that I recall giving Will Johnson any type of issues at times, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr., Maserati Marv, shout out to Marvin Harrison, and then was Deion Burks. And I was like, Deion was like, he was getting into some stuff with him, and I was like, yeah, he might not meet the threshold for some teams, but this dude's a baller, man.
Yeah, that's how I felt. And in the first game I watched, DP. So I started off hot, right? The first game I watched was Michigan. And we come out with our positional rankings, but just said I know for sure I have Will Johnson ranked as a top 5 player in the 2025 NFL draft, right? Now how high he goes, I'll reveal that in a couple weeks. But DP, I watched him against Will Johnson, and I was like, oh, no, his speed is for real. His speed, because you can tell his speed and quickness was starting to speed up Will Johnson, who is a very patient player, right, which is a good thing as far as playing the cornerback position. And he almost wants to be in the trail technique, but I think he was feeling like, hey, if I trail too much, baby, I'm not catching back up, DP. I'm not getting back on this trail.
I'm not getting back in this picture.
Yeah, I won't be back in this picture. And so I was like, okay. And then I watched some of the competitiveness, right, as far as being a smaller guy, and I'm gonna run a quick slant, right? And then him being able to, hold on to the football. And I'm like, okay, he had something to him. And then also Purdue did a good job of, doing the typical gadget guy stuff, right? When you talk about the orbit motion, jet sweeps, things like that. And it was like, okay, this is a playmaker. Now it's just a matter of where does he place himself, right? As far as, do people buy in like the Zay Flowers situation, or is this a Wan'Dale Robinson situation where he goes in that second, third round range? Do people buy in like a Kadarius Toney, or is he another, like you said, gadget type of football player that's how people threshold him? The reason why I'm buying in even more, DP, than a third roundish grade, right, is because just like with Tank Dell, just like with Zay Flowers, we watched this guy play on the outside. He played on the outside. Will Johnson wasn't going to the slot. It was him going outside to see Will Johnson also, right? He went on Johnson Island and said, let's figure this thing out. And and listen, he played well, DP. I'm watching him, I don't think might have been the Minnesota game, tracking the ball over his head, right? I think it was like a fade route to the end zone or whatever. He had a condensed split, and it was a fade route to the end zone, tracking the ball over his shoulder for the touchdown. So I just think a highly talented and highly skilled player. But DP, I want to transition because there's a name that I want to talk about, because first time having this conversation is right now, and I think it'd be dope just to get your opinion on it too. And that's Sam Brown. So wide receiver, he transferred from Houston. I want to say he went from West Virginia to Houston to now he's at Miami. And I had a won't say difficult, but somewhat, it was a challenging situation to watch him. And get overly excited and then not get excited at the same time, right? Like I went back and forth on how much I actually like Sam Brown. And it's probably the guy that we have the biggest discrepancy as far as rankings, because I think I had him at 5 or 6, 4, 5. I had him at 6 and you had him at 10, right? And I think that's probably the biggest discrepancy that we had. So I just want to talk about some of the things you've seen from Sam Brown.
He has an NFL size to me, 6'2", almost 200 pounds. I remember it was crazy because before I got into his tape, I thought it was going to be Miami tape. And I've watched him when I watched Donovan Smith at Houston. I was like, man, that number 4 is pretty good. Like, he can play. And then coming back, and I would go like, wait, he transferred? I was like, oh, that sucks for Donovan Smith. I was like, I hate to see that. You know what I mean?
He lost 2 wide receivers. He lost another guy we got to talk about, Matthew Golden, that went to Texas. And I think I gave Matthew Golden a 3rd round. So he lost a couple guys, DP.
I don't know what he might need to transfer himself, man, because like that's crazy to lose 2 like legitimate wide receivers. But I felt like he had good speed, vertical, a guy that didn't mind working the interior of the defense, working those in cuts and slants and things of that nature. He caught the ball well. I think for me is now you're going up against, because not to take a shot at the Big 12, but you're going to see some better corners in the ACC. You know what I mean? Like you face Clemson. I'm telling you right now, AJ Terrell's little brother, Avion Terrell, that's a sophomore, but that's a dog. You're going to see like Clemson's like that secondary is legit that they have. Florida State, like you're going in the ACC, you're going to see some tough cornerback play. You know what I mean, at multiple schools. So I think for me, it's going to be all right. Going from the Big 12, where the word has always been they don't play defense in the Big 12, to now going to the ACC where they play a little bit more. I want to just kind of see more growth from them. But this kid can play. He can absolutely play, Keith. And before I know you, I want to let you get your take on him and kind of what you saw. I want to get to, like, after that, before we close, I want to get to Nick Anderson, the other Oklahoma wide receiver, because I liked what I saw from him too.
All right, cool. Yeah, let's get into it. I had difficulty, DP, because he was such a big guy and he moved well, right? Like you're talking about the start-stop ability to accelerate, decelerate, those type of things. And this is going to rub people in different ways. I had 2 wide receivers, right, that came to mind as far as them being right around that 6'2" range and being able to run those in breakers and being able to separate against man, but also being taller, kind of, taller profiled guys. And one was Quentin Johnston. I thought of him like just as a mover, right? And then the other one I thought of, and this is the one where people had to be like, whoa. I thought of Brandon Ayuk. Because I just seen him, with those in breakers that Brandon Ayuk runs, and then he's also a good run after the catch guy. But I thought of somebody just kind of in that range, and then it's almost like I said, as soon as I wanted to love him, I was still like, I don't know yet. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so that's why he came in at number 6. But we talked about Juice Wells having an opportunity to elevate because of the size. This guy, if he puts on a show in Miami, trust me, he's going to elevate and probably be a top 50 prospect just because of the size and movement skills. But DP, let's wrap this thing up with I'll say is your guy. You brought him up. I think you're excited to talk about him. Mr. Nick Anderson, another wide receiver from Oklahoma. I think he's listed at 6'4", 215. Really big guy, entering his redshirt sophomore year.
Yeah, I was excited when I watched him, Keith, because you don't see 6'4", 215, 218 with that type of verticality to their game, right? The ability to press that vertical plane. And there's a route, I can't remember, was it against, it wasn't Texas, I can't remember who it was, but he ran kind of a corner post double move. He got to the blind spot, broke back in on the post, and I was like, yeah, this dude's big, but he's more fluid than I expected him to be.
Yep.
And that's how it was when
I was watching the film. I was like, okay.
So I got up a little bit. I was like, okay, I was late. I'm watching tape. I'm just kind of slouched, just chilling. I sat up in my seat. I was like, okay, wait a second here. You know what I mean? We might have some business here. So like, just for him, we talk about just because outside of T-Mac, there isn't another 6'3", 6'4" receiver that we've discussed. It's either 5'11", 6'1", maybe 6'2". He's a legit 6'4". I remember looking at a picture.
He looks it. Yeah,
his arms are down.
He's every bit of 6'4", 220. He's every bit of that. He's
100%. He just got it. And I watching him. The one thing I want to say for him that he got to improve: play to that size, play physical, play big. I watched him against Kansas, against Kobe Bryant. the corner, their star corner. That's an aggressive physical corner. He was getting on his nerves a little bit because he's really handsy. Fight through that, like make the ref throw the flag by being more aggressive and more physical with those type of DBs. And also play at the catch point. When you're 6'4", 215, 220, man, extend your arms. And that was the thing with QJ, with Quentin Johnson that we was talking about. Now you see him year 2, whether it's in training camp or preseason, he's working on it. So I think this is a guy that has a real big shot to rise. And I gave him a late second. I wouldn't be shocked if he goes out there and has it with I think it's Jackson Arnold, the sophomore junior quarterback. Now that Dylan Gabriel's gone, I wouldn't be shocked to see this young man actually blow up in this offense and then declare for the draft and could see himself as a late first, early second round pick.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's why I forgot what grade I came in on him. And I know a couple of meetings ago, right? It was probably about a month ago. I was like, hey, this Nick Anderson kid for Oklahoma. Yeah. I know I told you guys.
Because Keith, real quick, what was funny when I was watching him, I was like, man, he's like the opposite of Keon Coleman. Like Keon is so dominant and physical at the catch point when he's the more explosive athlete in terms of Nick Anderson, and he might be the better route runner out of the two. They're just like their body types are similar, but the way they win is just totally different.
Yeah, no, agree 100%. And I was trying to think of guys that he reminded me of, right? And I didn't know if it fell in that. He gave me Packers wide receiver vibe just right now until he develops like the other nuance and the details of the game. But like for a couple of years, the Packers had every long striding wide receiver. Talking about Allen Lazard, Marquez Valdez Scantling, and what they had Equinemius St. Brown, right? So they had every 6'2.5", 6'3" long striding wide receiver on the receiver core. He kind of just reminded me of that style player. But like you said, you're talking about a guy that could potentially elevate his draft stock is definitely him. So man, listen, that wraps up our top 10 Playmaker Edition 2025 NFL Draft wide receiver conversation, right, man? Well, listen, that was a really good conversation, really dope conversation. I hope y'all took notes and we dropped those names, and so that way you can pay attention because the college football season is here. I won't even say it's right around the corner. It is here, knocking on your front door, baby. And we are excited about that. So listen, man, I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. If you can hear my voice, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to comment and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel over at Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. And you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day shot for being our everydayers. Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, get the latest episode as soon as it is available. On tomorrow's episode, guys, like he said, college football is here. So we are going to get into the prospects you need to watch when Florida State faces Georgia Tech in Dublin, Ireland. We got another game going overseas to kick off the season. I think last year didn't work out too well, or the year before. So we're excited about college football. DJU, Lawrence Toa-Feely, all the receivers, defensive linemen, whoever. Florida State, Georgia Tech, Haynes King, I think at quarterback for Georgia Tech now, who was at Texas A&M. So if you're ready to hear about some college football prospects that's kicking off this Saturday, come and join the conversation again tomorrow. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.